again, everybody, and welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips joined by Gamecock Central columnist Scott Davis for a look back at South Carolina's victory over Western Carolina this past Saturday. Scott writes a weekly column here on Gamecock Central, and he brings us a fan's perspective each week. Scott, I laugh out loud each week that I read your column, and this week that was certainly the case. The Joy of Six is your column this week on Gamecock Central. Good to have you, man.
Thank you, Emerson. Good to be here. It's good to be talking to you about South Carolina going bowling in 2016. We talked many times about it. That's all I wanted to do this year was get to 6 wins, go to a bowl, didn't care what it was or where it was. And South Carolina is going to do that now after hanging on to beat Western Carolina.
Pop a cork, take your clothes off, run through the streets, hug and kiss the ones you love. The Gamecocks are going bowling. That's how Scott starts off this week's column. And Scott, 33 wins in 3 years under Steve Spurrier. At a glance, you wouldn't be typically excited about a 6-win season, but after going 3-9 a year ago, it feels good to get to 6 and to get back on the bowl trip.
It really does. I'm almost surprised at how excited I am about it. As you mentioned a few years ago, you winning 11 games in a year for 3 years in a row and starting to feel like you've climbed your way into the elite part of college football. And at that point, if somebody said, hey, you might win 6 games and go to the Independence Bowl or the Birmingham Bowl in 2016, I don't think I've been very excited about it, but I am today after what happened last year, everything the Gamecocks went through, just a tumultuous season, Steve Spurrier leaving at midseason, just a really strange year. And on top of that, your arch rival ends up playing for the national championship last year while all of that was going on. And there just didn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel last year. And so for these guys and these seniors to be able to go to a bowl, I think it's great.
Scott, what makes it extra gratifying is the fact that national media in particular never thought the Gamecocks would make it to a bowl this year.
They really didn't. I've talked about that a lot in my column going back to the summer. I've just been amazed at the tone that the media had in regards to the program. I never thought South Carolina would challenge for the SEC East, but I said, hey, can this team stumble into 6 wins with this schedule? Sure, sure they can. And they did, and people seem shocked by that. I've seen a few national media people tweeting things like, Will Muschamp should be considered for Coach of the Year and things along those lines, and I don't think any one of them thought they were going to be saying that this year. And I'm glad that they have to.
Gamecock Central Radio here. Emerson Phillips with Scott Davis. Have you heard about our new phone app? We've got a free phone app that allows you to listen to Gamecock Central Radio podcasts. You can download the app on the iStore and on Google Play. To subscribe to our podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or just visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Scott, you exalt the Gamecocks for picking up the 6th win and earning a bowl trip on Saturday, and you jump right into game balls this week. 8 game balls in your column this week. Started off with Rico Bleepin' Dowdle and Debo Bleepin' Samuel.
Tell you what, Rico Dowdle is the most potent weapon South Carolina's had at running back since Marcus Lattimore left the campus. He has just been a dominant force since he came into the lineup after being injured early in the season, and he's the kind of running back that fans love to see. He enjoys contact. He wants to hit you and looks to do so. Debo Samuel, I was worried that perhaps we wouldn't see much out of him this season because of that nagging hamstring, and when he's been in the lineup, he has been a truly special weapon at receiver. He makes tough catches. He's got speed. They've been using him on that rushing play where he takes the ball and runs around the edge, and he's looked virtually unstoppable on that play. So 2 exciting young players for South Carolina. One's a true freshman, the other a sophomore, and so the future definitely looks bright for the Gamecocks on offense, at least when you think about some of these young guys.
Samuel scored 3 first-half touchdowns for South Carolina on Saturday, and Rico Dowdle ran for 226 yards. That's the 6th highest single-game rushing total ever by a Gamecock running back. So, Scott, you got to attend the game on Saturday, and you live in Atlanta now, so you don't get to go to as many Carolina games as you used to, but you sound like you really had a good time Saturday.
It was great. Every time I go, I try to make it to at least one game a year. if not more. Hopefully next year I'll be able to get some more. But we did have a great time. My wife and I and her parents and her sister and brother and my brother-in-law came, and we brought our 5-year-old nieces to their first South Carolina game, and we weren't sure how that was going to go, but they had a great time. They really enjoyed it, loved the band, loved the cheerleaders, and especially loved Cocky, as we all do. And it was a great occasion to be down there to see South Carolina wrap up its 6th win. It really felt to me like almost like winning an SEC East title or something. I know that sounds crazy, but I was just really happy for those guys.
And you checked out the Gamecock Walk Saturday, Scott. I particularly enjoyed where you said that when you saw Jake Bentley, you said, "Hey, there's Jake Bentley, and your wife was looking on in horror.
Yeah, she was. We took the girls down there to see that and thought they would be the ones who would be jumping up and down and getting excited. And it turned out it was me that was doing it. So I definitely still have a little bit of a 12-year-old kid inside me somewhere, and seeing those guys up close was just really cool. I'd never been to that in my many years of going to South Carolina games, and it's a fun little tradition.
All right, game balls this week for the Armed Forces tribute at halftime, ham rolls at the cocktail party, and the post-game victory meal at Rush's. Scott, a lot of game balls going out this week.
Yeah, it was good to be able to hand them out, and good food, family, friends, Gamecock win. So all around, just a really good Saturday for us.
All right, the last game ball, it took me back a little bit, not caring about the Clemson game.
Yeah, it sounds shocking. But for me, I just, that game, I've never really considered it to be within South Carolina's grasp this season. I never would have thought I would have reduced myself to feeling that way about that particular game, because I just agonize when South Carolina loses to Clemson. And this year I just really had a realistic sense of where this team was and where this program is right now on the spectrum and where Clemson is. And so South Carolina more than likely is not going to defeat Clemson on Saturday. And I just want Gamecock fans to not let that cloud what has otherwise been a very successful opening campaign for Will Muschamp and company. And so that's what I'm going to focus on anyway, or try to.
All right, only 3 deflated balls this week, Scott. Not a lot of negative, but we did have 3 deflated balls.
Yeah, the Gamecocks really struggled on defense. I was really surprised by that effort on Saturday. They gave up a ton of yards. It seemed like Western Carolina could make things happen whenever they needed to. If it was 3rd and 9, they could run the football and get a first down with relative ease, and that was pretty scary when you think about the fact that a team that will more than likely be going to the college football playoff is getting ready to play you on Saturday, and it also happens to be your arch rival. But South Carolina has struggled against mobile quarterbacks for about as long as I can remember. It's been through several coaching staffs. It just doesn't seem to matter who is at the helm for the Gamecocks. That just seems to be a troublesome area for them. And so they struggled again on Saturday, but they did get the win, and that's all that they needed to do.
Yep, you're right about the mobile quarterbacks, and you're right about Western Carolina being surprisingly productive on offense. The Catamounts ran for 238 yards against the Gamecocks on Saturday, and this is a Western Carolina team that is now 2-9 on the year, and they are in the cellar in the Southern Conference. But all that's in the rearview mirror now, Scott. We turn our attention to the Palmetto Bowl, 7:30 kickoff Saturday night up in Tiger Town for the Gamecocks and the Tigers, the annual renewal of the Palmetto Bowl, the Palmetto Series rivalry. What are your plans for the game?
I will be watching that game on television in Atlanta. That is the day that my wife and I typically go get our Christmas tree, so we will continue that tradition. Sometimes the Gamecocks have won, and sometimes they've lost, so whether or not we get a tree doesn't really seem to have much bearing on the outcome. But I have been to the South Carolina-Clemson game at Clemson on 4 or 5 occasions, and was fortunate enough to see the Gamecocks win 3 of those times. But there's nothing worse than being there when they don't win, and I've experienced that as well. And so hopefully we'll be competitive. The team that you saw play Tennessee will show up in Clemson on Saturday night, and Either way, regardless of what happens, this has been a successful season for South Carolina. It's been a great start for Will Muschamp. It's going to allow him to keep his recruiting class together and perhaps add to it, and really gives the program a little bit of momentum going into 2017.
We hope you'll check out Scott's column. If you need a lift on this Monday, check out The Joy of Six, Scott Davis's weekly column this week on Gamecock Central. Scott, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emerson. Talk to you next week.
All right, he's Scott Davis, and I'm Emerson Phillips. This is Gamecock Central Radio. We'll be back next week to talk about the Carolina-Clemson game. Again, 7:30 kick on Saturday night at Memorial Stadium, and it'll be televised on ESPN. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for joining us on Gamecock Central Radio.